At Dot and Company, we believe that all agencies deserve amazing account managers and that all of those account managers deserve to be supported, encouraged, and loved on. That's why we started CAM Community, a membership only for account managers. And inside, you'll gain access to the exact training we use to train our own client facing account managers, but also access to all of our SOPs, processes, and live trainings on a variety of topics. If you're an account manager, this is the place you've been waiting for. Learn more at dotandcompany.co/CAM community.
Like getting more clients, getting more leads, and what you're charging in terms of your rates, whether fixed price or hourly or retainers, it's kind of like, those are like ingredients to like a great meal. And we just need to make sure we get like enough of the right, like we need to get enough of each of those ingredients to overall solve that problem, which is really like a revenue and a cash flow thing.
Welcome to the Happy Clients Podcast, brought to you by Dot and Company. Whether you're a virtual assistant, an agency owner, or a client-facing account manager, we all deal with clients. Lucky for you, client management is what we do best. Now, let's dig in, chat cam life, and have some fun along the way. Cheers to happy clients.
Welcome to the show, Brent. We're so excited to have you on. You've been on our list of ideal guests for a long time. We finally made it happen. So we're so pumped to have you and to get your brain of the agency owner who is scaling up and kind of dig into some of these pain points.
Yeah, let's do it. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, Brent, before we get started, maybe you could give us the Coles Notes version of how you landed here in the crazy agency world, and then of course what you're doing to help agency owners.
Yeah, it for me it started in lunch detention. That was in high school many years ago. I feel like it was actually no, I don't feel like it was just yesterday. So a friend of mine at the time, he was in lunch detention. I was just passing through. At least that's my story. I was just walking through the room, right? But I was building websites at the time, and I heard he was making some money. I think he was like selling email lists or something. We were, seniors in high school, and I don't know. It was probably like, "Hey, dude, you making money with the internet?" Like that was like the extent of the conversation, and we decided to meet after school. I know it sounds like super cheesy, but we decided to meet after school and create a business. And I don't think we really even knew what a business was. I mean, we went down to the county and we registered. We had to stand in line. Like it was like the equivalent of like the DMV back in the day. Like you stood in line and there was some clerk who was like, like had a stamp, and like we had to come up with a name right then. And we were like, and I think the name that we originally wanted was taken. And so we came up with something very eloquent, crystal clear designs. I don't know. Like we could have chosen anything in the world in 1999. And that was the name of the company. That was the legal name of the business. And fast forward, that company, we kept it going through college and took it full time. And then that business grew to a pretty successful digital agency, and it got acquired in 2012. And then that's when we started Ugurus to start helping agencies avoid all the mistakes that we made for 7 or 8 years before we finally figured out how to run a business. And then since then, we've just been helping agencies grow and scale. 2 years ago, I co-founded another agency, Unlimited WP. So we're a white label WordPress development shop. It's a business that serves the agency market. So that's something that I look for alignment now, that we're very much focused on that market and that ideal customer profile. And so that business has scaled to about 95 folks in the last 2 years, which has been pretty cool to see that company grow. And last year we were acquired by DigitalOcean, not Unlimited WP, but Ugurus, through kind of a multiple stage acquisition. Super funky, but I think that brings us to present day.
That's awesome. And I love how the first thing you did was you went and registered a business. Isn't today's version of that like going and buying a URL or a domain name or something?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to somebody, and this is, we were talking kind of off, in the green room or whatever, about like biggest agency challenges. I was just talking to an agency owner the other day, and they were still like they had committed to an agency, but they're like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Well, what's the business?" He's like, "Well, I haven't registered it yet. He hadn't gotten his LLC or whatever." And I'm like, "You should probably do that." He's like, "Well, yeah, I just got to get everything figured out first." And I'm like, no, man, I think that's like 3 minutes on like your state website or whatever. Like you just go like colorado.gov or whatever, like the Secretary of State or whatever has like a form that you fill out. I think it costs $10 in Colorado to register your LLC. And I was like, dude, that's 10 minutes. Like, just get that done. Like, check that off your list. Like, have the business, like, just mentally, mindset wise, but he just felt like, oh, I still got to figure out something. So I'm like, what do you have to figure out? Like, you register the business and get a client. Like, that's that's essentially the life cycle of an agency, is it can be profitable on your very first day in business. Whereas like building a product or something like that, like, you might have to have capital and wait, raise money or work on something for 18 months. And, I think a lot of people make agencies really complicated, and they don't need to be. So yeah, if I was able to register my business as a 17-year-old in high school, it did cost more then than it did now. I had to pay, well, to register over the state, I think it was like $50, but then we had to have an attorney draft our LLC documents, which cost us $500. And I remember to this day, our attorney asked us, he said, who's president and who's vice president? And we were like, and so my partner and I, we like conferred a little bit, and we're like, do you have a quarter? We asked our attorney, do you have a quarter? Like we flipped a coin for who was president and vice president.
That's hilarious.
Anyway.
And here you are all these years later.
Yeah.
It's literally my favorite question. Like when we kind of dive into that entrepreneurial story and how you got here, I will admit the 17-year-old standing in line is a new one for us, but it's such a great place to start and really understand how, not only how you got here, but how you're helping people get to their goals. So cut to today. You're helping grow marketing agencies. You're certainly helping tons of people be super profitable. What's the secret, Brent? Bold question, hey?
Yeah, the secret, right? What's the silver bullet? I think if I were like the one thing that made the biggest difference for myself in our agency, and we talk about this on all our webinars and our podcast a lot, is essentially getting help. Right? Like we ran our business for the first 8 years of the agency, and we had this mindset that we had to figure it out on our own. And I think this is really common, that like the entrepreneurial myth of seeing these other people succeed, that we kind of idolize that person and we think, oh, this person is the one that's making all of this happen. And oh, I want to be that person. And so I think that I had that like in, I don't know if it's from movies or TV or articles, like, but I just had that as like a core belief. And so when I had people that would come up, or, consultants or coaches or advisors, right, that would kind of try to help or provide guidance, right, it was kind of like, oh, well, we got this figured out. Like we got a plan, we got, and the truth is like our plan was trial and error. It was like, hey, we're going to try some stuff and see if it works and keep trying stuff. And, that for us, that led to kind of a breaking point where we like ran our business into the ground. I mean, we had, way too many employees, way too much overhead. We had a downtown office, like, we had all the trappings of what seemed like a successful agency, but when you like pulled back the curtain, it was a dumpster fire. I mean, like I had no money, like we were putting everything on credit cards. We'd literally like charge our credit card, with like our own credit card charge. Like, I don't even think you're supposed to do that, but we basically give the business a loan through like our personal American Express cards and stuff. And it was bad. Right. And so finally we were like, we should probably like we had an offer from somebody that to help us. And we said, hey, we should probably give Joe a call, because we like obviously need help. And I think the biggest hack that we've learned is like to create a successful business, like find those people that already have the business you'd like to have, and either through a paid consulting or coaching relationship or some type of relationship, right, have them teach you like how to get from where you are right now to where you want to get. And once we started bringing in like the best sales consultants, mentors, the best, operational people, marketing people, then that started having a huge impact on our business, right? We started to like leapfrog and like learn how to sell, or learn how to position our business, or learn how to manage accounts or whatever, right? Versus just trying to figure that out on our own.
Is that kind of common in this space, in this entrepreneurial sort of I can do it all mindset? Is that a blocker you're seeing often, obviously?
Oh, every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we talk to, I'd say in terms of people that are considering working with Ugurus, anywhere from 5 to 10 agencies a day. And, some people have like tried and they've gotten burned by some, coach. I know this is a podcast. I'm putting coach in air quotes, right? Somebody who like had an agency for like 5 minutes, maybe had like an $80,000 month or whatever, $85,000 month. And the rest of them were not that. And they say, oh, I'm a 7-figure business or whatever, because they had they had a 7-figure run rate for 1 month. And the amount of those people that are out there saying, oh, I can coach other businesses, right, is incredible. Like, it's insane. So a lot of people have been burned on getting help, which is unfortunate. It truly is. But I think there's also a lot of people that they have their plan and they want to give it a try on their own, and I've found, like, for my own business now, like, when I need to grow, I need to find those people to help me break through the plateaus, because it's most likely like a type of thinking, right? Like, something in your mindset is keeping you from achieving that, right? And so, it's not really even a strategic thing. It's a mindset thing of, like, investing in somebody to have you come in or have them come in and help you to grow the business, right? It's like the most difficult thing I see people struggle with.
Mm-hmm. And so, on the same vein of getting help, like, that seems to be the biggest thing when it comes to actually growing a team, which is equivalent of, getting help. When you see agency owners who are starting out and starting to scale and starting to bring on clients and grow, where do you recommend they start when it comes to hiring that first person or that second person? How do they start growing that team?
Yeah, that's a great question, Taylor. I mean, I think the document that I spend, or the tool that I spend the most time with in my business as like a leader of the company, is my accountability chart. Very similar to an organization chart, but it's got, key accountabilities listed for each of the seats on the team. And that's something that I like nerd out hardcore on that. But I think just being really clear on what is the job that needs to get done that actually creates the outcome for the business, not what you'd like somebody to do, but like what's necessary to deliver the value for the customer or for the team, and getting really, really crisp on that before you make a hiring decision. I think if I look at the biggest difference between, like, 25-year-old Brent hiring, and 41-year-old Brent hiring is, back then it was like, it was all about, where do I see the most like pain for myself? Like, oh man, I'm like struggling with like design, like, oh, I should get a designer. And then like, I just go and, look for designers without understanding, like, what is design for my business, right? It's like, even saying like a front-end designer, like, what is front-end design for my business? Oh, it means that we need to, mock up a PSD with the client. We need to have client meetings. We need to go through and get client feedback. We need to implement changes. We need to stay on time and on budget. We need to build out the website on WordPress. We need to do that in 1 to 2 business days. And getting like really, really crisp on what design is in my business, right? And then using that to build out like a job scorecard or a job description and saying, this is like really specifically like what I need to have done in order for this job to be successful. And it's like, maybe my business is doing 1 design a month. Maybe my business is doing 6 designs a month. Like, the type of people that might want to do those jobs are very, very different. Like, if you get somebody who's like a high quality, designer, high creative, they might want to work on 1 project a month or 1 project a quarter. And if you put them into a web agency that's churning and burning, 10 websites a month, like, they're going to self-destruct, right? And so we used to use, like, when I was 25, I literally used we call it the I know a guy method. And that's where, I know a guy, I know a gal. Like, I had a loose tie relationship with somebody at the Art Institute. And I'd literally be like, hey, can you send over another designer? It was like, and they'd be like, oh yeah, they'd send us a new grad. And it was like this, I don't know. It was like this machine, right? They'd send over a new designer. We'd like work them into the floor. They'd quit like in 4 weeks. And then we'd get like, 4 months or whatever. And we'd get like another designer. And so we had a lot of employee turnover. People were, I think, frustrated. We couldn't pay them very well. Right. And so I think just thinking about that accountability chart is just Like I just live there. Like when my team starts coming to me and being like, oh, I need more capacity with such and such thing. I'm always like, let's go to the accountability chart. Let's look at what's going on. Like explain to me the system that's happening. Like where's the work flowing? What are the interactions? Who's taking this? Who's accountable for it? Okay, is this a new seat? Is this us just getting another person that's already sitting in the same type of seat, right? And we just spend an incredible amount of time on that accountability chart and then getting really specific on the job scorecards and the job descriptions. And that work, it requires a lot more upfront work. So like your hiring process, instead of it being like my old hiring process used to be very backloaded, where I just like throw a job posting out there, like, oh, looking for a designer, right? And then we'd get like all sorts of random designers. We're looking for a project manager. And then we'd get like, people that were managing like multi-billion-dollar projects all the way down to people that were, managing like tiny little web projects, right? And so we used to spend a lot of time, like we'd get all these very diverse candidates, and then we'd have to like sift through and try to find one that would fit us. And most of the time it was like whichever candidate we thought would take our low offer. And now we spend a lot of time on the front end. So we create those job descriptions, we create those job scorecards, and we almost try to design them in a way where it's going to turn off 97% of the applicants, right? Where most people would read the applicant and be like, oh, I don't want to do that. That sounds hard, right? But we're looking for that one person who's like, this is what I was meant to do. And then it makes team building great. And I mean, I'd say our average team member now on the Ugurus side, is 5+ years,
Wow.
like people
That's
come
awesome.
and they stay, and they're a part of the culture, and they're part of growing the business, and they know what they're doing. They know what they're accountable for. They have a ton of freedom and autonomy, because the day that they get hired, we hand them the job scorecard and we say, these are your marching orders. These are your numbers. These are your KPIs. This is what you're doing. And they're like, cool, hell yeah. Like I get it. And the time to train them, the time to ramp up it's days, whereas I used to spend 6 months on ramping new team
Wow.
members,
Mhm.
trying
Yeah.
to get them to performing, right? Because you basically took somebody who was a generalist designer, and then you had to turn them into like,
Mhm.
somebody functional.
Yeah, I love that approach, because I think a lot of agency owners are hiring for a job title, and they
Yes.
don't necessarily understand what that looks like inside of their business, because from one agency to the next, it can look totally different with the same job title. So I love your approach to really understanding what someone's accountable for, what their KPIs are, and almost like the after effects first of like, what are these things
Mhm.
that you need to be delivering on versus just like you're a marketing manager, because that doesn't really mean anything. But what you're actually doing for the business and doing for the clients, that is essentially why you're being hired. So I kind of love how you flip that around. We've been kind of taking that angle as well, which has been super helpful. And so I love kind of hearing that.
And I think just really valuable in terms of why, people are looking for someone like a client account manager, someone coming to us because they've experienced these sort of pains and struggles, right? So I can imagine, Brent, and please correct me if I'm wrong, people are coming to you, they've maybe tried it, they've tried their way, kind of wrapping all these things that we just talked about all up. They've maybe had a bit of an ego, they've tried their way, didn't quite work out. They have a business plan, they have all the things, but can't quite get there. What are some of these pain points that you help agencies with? What are like the, top 3 struggles of agencies, and why they're coming to you to solve all of their problems?
Yeah. I'd say the number one most common is agencies need more leads. And to drill that down a step further, really what they want is they want more clients, or at least that's what they think they need. A lot of agencies are generally undervalued or underpriced. And so sometimes the desire for more clients really is a desire just for more income. And they think that, because they set their rate, like we had set our hourly rate like in 1999, and it was like 2007. And we were like, when I reached out to that mentor of mine, I was like struggling with my business. We were unprofitable. We were losing money. We were stressed out. We were frustrated. And he said, well, what do you guys charge per hour? And I'm thinking like, why does that matter? Like, doesn't he just know? I just need more clients. I just need more better clients, right? He's like, what do you guys charge per hour? And I'm like, well, we do fixed price projects. He's like, yeah, but like, where do you come? Like, if somebody just comes in for a few hours, or how do you come up with your fixed price? And I was like, all right. I mean, at the time it was like $65 an hour. And he was like, he's like, do you think maybe that's part of the problem? Like, do you think you should raise your rates? And I was like, but if we raise our rates, all of our clients are going to leave. And he's like, but if you don't raise your rates, you're probably going to be out of business. So it won't matter anyways. And I was like, Joe, that's so good. I was like, so I came back to the office and we ended up raising our rates to like, I don't know, $125 an hour or something. It was a big raise. And it was weird because we actually had a lot of clients that emailed us and said, hey, like, we're really excited that you guys are finally taking yourselves seriously. Like, it was almost like
Wow.
they saw that we were undercharging, and and they felt like that we should have been charging more. And I think we did have a couple of clients that kind of moved on. But that made a huge impact on us, right? All of a sudden it was like this oxygen came into the business, right? Like, oh my gosh, right? And so I think that, like, getting more clients, getting more leads, and what you're charging in terms of your rates, whether fixed price or hourly or retainers, it's kind of like, those are like ingredients to like a great meal. And we just need to make sure we get like enough of the right, like, we need to get enough of each of those ingredients to overall solve that problem, which is really like a revenue and a cash flow thing. So like, that's really like the main struggle that we see people. Now, here's the third struggle. And sometimes the third struggle really is the number one struggle. And you probably with account managers deal with this a lot. So that's when somebody in an agency, because most of the time the agency owners are very involved in the work they're doing for their clients. Some of them are the sole deliver engine, right? They're doing all of the actual web design or web development or build work, right, for small agencies. Or even if they've grown to 10 people, they're still spending 80-90% of their week doing client services. I was talking to this one agency owner who's spending 100% of her time. I was like, how much time do you spend a week marketing your business? And she was like, does an hour on Sunday count? And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, sure, right? So an hour on Sunday, right? Why is she not like, so she's got this leads and clients problem, and but she also doesn't have any space to actually do the marketing work, or even think about delegating the marketing work, or hiring somebody, or any of that stuff. And so that's a person who we could sit there and hammer marketing tactics in every day. We could just be like, email your list, get out there, create some content, right? And it might work for a short period of time. They might get super motivated and be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be an influencer on TikTok. I'm going to, post about all my client wins, all this kind of stuff. And so they'll find that time to like sprint for like 4 to 8 weeks, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, right? They'll find the time to do the TikTok video every day, right? But they didn't solve the core problem of 100% of their normal working time is spent working on client projects. And they've got this extra like afterburner going for like a few weeks. And when that engine like runs out, they're going to regress to the mean, and they're going to stop marketing their business, right? And they're going to get back to just like doing the same thing. They're never going to market their business, right? And so in those agencies where the owner is clearly the bottleneck, we have to say, look, what's the work that you're doing in the business? Walk me through, what does your week look like? How many meetings do you have with clients? What are the deliverables? How many of those deliverables are you doing? What kind of business admin are you doing? Are you sending your invoices? Are you, do you have a bookkeeper? Do you have a VA, an executive assistant? And depending on their budget, if they have a good amount of cash flow coming into the business, we could hire some more, sophisticated team members, like maybe, hiring an account manager through your firm, through Dot. And, you could probably take on like a higher value seat if you had some cash flow, but in a lot of cases, like it's like sometimes razor thin margins. And so we have to go, okay, what are some low value seats or tasks that we can pull off the owner to try to free up like a half day, or maybe ideally like a full day, and that's like step one, is like solve the delivery issue and solve that like owner time scheduling issue. And once you have that 1 day a week that's freed up, then we can start saying, okay, we just bought ourselves a huge investment for the business in terms of energy you can spend working on the business. So if people have the time and money working on leads and clients, sales, marketing, prices, right? That's the first two kind of challenges. If they're like, yeah, I know what to do with marketing, but I never have time to do it, then we need to look at the delivery engine and look at like what the owner is spending their time doing. So that would be like the top 3 challenges and a little bit of the solution on that.
I totally agree with that. Like we see that often, especially I'm chatting to agency owners all the time and seeing kind of what their day-to-day looks like. So now they have the great team, they have a really awesome support, and they're kind of looking at those next steps. What is, I guess it looks different for everybody, but how are you sort of helping people guide them into what that actually looks like for them and their agency?
So ultimately, our goal is to see an agency kind of own their market and create a scalable business that has freedom for the owner. And so, own a market is when you know who your customer is, you know how you serve them, and everybody in the market knows you, right? They know you as like the solution. And that feels really good from an owner standpoint because they're getting leads and clients outside of referrals. They can be on stages, they can be on podcasts, they can be on webinars. When they wake up in the morning, they know who the heck their customer is. They know how to tell their team to serve that person. They become more smart and intelligent about what that type of customer needs every day. Like it never gets boring. It's like the opposite. It gets like more and more challenging the deeper you get into a niche. And then we see agencies that are owning a market. They can build, tons of systems and processes because there's some repetition in the business. They can delegate much more easily. And watching those businesses scale, and just to give you some idea here. I mean, we're seeing businesses that are owning markets where the agency is making 3 to 5, sometimes more millions per year in annual revenue, and their net income as a percentage of their revenue is in the 35 to 45% space. And so when you run like the calculator game on that, and you're like, okay, a business making 3 million a year, 45% net income for the business owner. The business owner works 10 to 25 hours a week because everything's so systems driven. Like that's just fundamentally like life changing. And so that's our goal with like everybody. It's like helping them truly own a market, start creating that flywheel. So they're spinning this business where it's a truly scalable business. It maybe that they could even exit from it one day, versus I think a lot of agency owners that are generalists. It's like if the owner left the business, like, it'd disappear in 6 to 12 months, and so that business is really what our goal is with people. And as you can imagine, there's lots of, baby steps on the way to that journey, but we've had now, 3-4 years in the program, we've had several folks that have kind of graduated to that level, and it's been incredible to watch how their life has changed.
I love that. And so keeping with this motivation of, getting to that point, when you say freedom for an owner, so, this is what their end goal is, freedom, maybe working 10 hours a week. What are some of the things that agency owners seem to want on the other side of that? Because, it's probably not laying on a beach all day, but what are some of the things that they're reaching for, or maybe that they want to work on once they have all that time back? What are some of those things that you hear?
Like for some people, it's they're having a lot of fun growing the business, and so they just keep like, we call it playing in a bigger game, or playing a bigger game within our space. So for some of those companies, they've started to acquire other businesses, which has been really cool. So they're not doing easier things. In some ways, they're doing harder things, right? They're doing things that maybe happened at a different entrepreneurial cycle, right? Like when I first started out, the last thing I was thinking about was like, oh, this is how I'm going to buy a business, right? But if you're like, hey, how do I 2x a $3 million business this year? Well, one way is I can get, twice as many leads and clients. We could raise our prices, right? Another way is just I could buy another $3 million business that looks really similar to mine, and I can just merge that into my business. It's an M&A strategy, right? It's really hard to do that kind of stuff if you don't have like a ton of free cash flow coming from your business. And so that's something that's been really cool to watch happen. Another thing though has been, I don't know if it's sitting on the beach, but it's like pursuing other projects. So a lot of early stage agencies, like they're building software or, products or e-commerce stores or whatever. And they start to have this itch of like, I want to build my own thing. I want to build my own SaaS. I want to build my own, store or whatever, because they're doing it for their clients. Like they have the skills, they just lack a product, right? And so I see a lot of agency owners start that journey way too early, and they start it out of a frustration with running a crappy agency. So they're frustrated with their agency. And so they're like, okay, like, how do I feel better about myself or whatever? Like, I'm going to start a SaaS. It's going to be like a way easier business. And the truth is, like, it's not an easier business. It's just another type of business. All businesses can be freaking hard, right? And what we see with agencies that have been able to achieve that level of freedom, where they have $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $10 million in revenue, and they have systems and processes and people that are kind of taking care of everything, is they now have the time, the resources, and the entrepreneurial skills to actually fund and create second and third businesses where they can, find CEOs. Like, I'm in that stage of my life where, like, Unlimited WP is run by a CEO. Like, I participate in the business like a few hours a month, provided some startup capital and whatever. I provide my agency expertise. I have a unique set of skills, but, like, I'm not in the trenches, man. Like, Ronik's in the trenches. Like, it's a really good feeling when you get to look at, like, a profit and loss statement at the end of the month, and you're like, oh, cool, there's profit. Like, oh, I get a dividend or this or that. And you didn't have to be in the trenches, like working 40, 50 hours a week, right? Somebody else did that. And so what I see a lot of agency owners do is, like, they start creating 2 or 3, 4 businesses before, like, even one has reached that escape velocity. And, most of the time that just doesn't end very well for them, right? They end up shutting the SaaS down, the agency suffers, whatever. And so I think freedom becomes that choice of, like, who you work with, when you work, how you work, right? Like, those are really important characteristics. And sometimes for some people, it's even just choosing their clients. Like, I had one of my more successful elite members, he literally just, like, fired like 20% of his clients. He's like, they're just like, they don't bring me, like, really good juju. I was like, you fired 20% of your clients because they don't bring you good juju, He's like, I'm really about my energy now, because that's what's important to me, is, like, how I feel throughout the day. And he's like, every time I have calls with these people, like, he's like, they have good businesses. I like them. They're great people, but they just didn't, like, what they were doing didn't align with me. And so I just made a change. Right. And so it's like, when you can do that from a place of abundance, that's really cool. When you're having to do that and you're having to wonder whether you're going to pay your mortgage or be able to save for your kids' college, right? Then you're in a really big predicament. You're like, oh man, these clients bring me negative energy, but I got that bill coming up. I got to keep them. Right. And so I think as you start to scale the business and achieve that freedom, you get what we call agency, which is a funny term, right? But it's like you get freedom to choose. And that freedom oftentimes doesn't exist early on in the business.
That's such great insight.
It's literally my favorite type of client to work with, because just when you work with those really awesome, and by client, I mean agency, but when you work with those clients who bring the team joy, the team wants to talk to them, the team wants to do the work for them. It's just such a morale boost too. So I love agencies that are at that level. And I think you actually touched on something really important too, is that using sort of this agency, having an agency and, like, thinking about next steps. I wouldn't say it's ever really, you go on a beach for like a week or two, but it's never really just like sitting on anything, right? I think there's always something that, especially the people we work with, are always kind of looking for that next step. What's next for me? I am an entrepreneur. I do have that sort of fire inside of me. And then to maybe just kind of having that lifestyle, maybe earlier, maybe you don't want to work till you're 65. Those are all wins too, right?
Yeah, I do happen to be going to the beach next week. So
well deserved.
Well deserved. Don't get me wrong, love the beach.
That's amazing. So for our audience, if they're listening, they're like, these struggles are real for me. I need help. Like you said at the beginning of our recording, I just need somebody to reach out to get help. Where can people learn more about you and Ugurus and get that support that they probably need?
Yeah, awesome. You can check out our website, ugurus.com. That's UGURUS.com. There's a bunch of resources on there. We have this agency accelerator kit. It has like a proposal template, has an SOP example, has a playbook example, a bunch of other free cool tools. If y'all are interested in that, you can just reach out to me on email, just brent@ugurus.com, and just say, hey, heard you on the podcast, and we'll hook you up with the agency accelerator.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been not only like I learned a lot, but also just inspiring just to, hear about some of these other successful agencies. And I'm excited to bring this back to our clients as well. But thank you so much, Brent.
Great to be here.
Cheers to happy client.